This morning we are joined by David Burton with Missouri Extension. And David, I'm very happy to have you here because one of my favorite topics in the world is, well, it's Mr. Rogers, but being a good neighbor. And so very naturally, Missouri Extension has its new program. Can you share what it means to be a good neighbor and how Missouri Extension is helping people do that?
Yes, well, it can mean many different things. We actually have 5 steps in our program to move you from being a resident to an engaged neighbor. So there are different components to it. I love that you mentioned Mr. Rogers, though. That's a great tie-in. And it really begins, being a great neighbor begins by learning and using the names of your immediate neighbors. We say the 8 closest front doors to your door. Works whether you're in an apartment or subdivision or even out in a rural setting. The 8 closest front doors.
So I understand you weren't even aware of you called it a gold mine you were sitting on in terms of your neighbors. So can you sort of share your own experience with this and what your goals are now that you sort of had this epiphany?
Yeah, well, about 2 years ago, I would have told you that I was a great neighbor. I mowed my lawn, I didn't throw loud parties, and I picked up after my dog when we went on a walk. So I was a great neighbor. And then it dawned on me that people had moved in over time, and I hadn't even taken the effort to get to know them. I, I didn't even know their names. And how can you have a relationship with someone when you don't even know and use their name? I mean, that's like the basic starting point.
That's
And
level one, right?
level one. And so, I had to go and reintroduce myself to neighbors and say, I'm going to do a better job at this. And, we have a little chart that we offer in our class and, write these names down and remember them and use those names. It's a powerful tool.
So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so I grew up with neighborhoods. But when I moved to the four states, I learned that the equivalent of neighborhoods a lot of times is towns, and that dynamic and relationship between neighborhoods or between towns is very similar in that regard. And so, do you have any tips for ways that maybe towns can interact in a neighborly way and get to know each other and maybe form a stronger bond?
Wow, these are big questions that you're asking. And,
I need answers. I got it. I
you
got these answers.
we have an epidemic of loneliness in America. About pre-COVID, 70% of Americans said they felt they were lonely. So it's an epidemic. And then by contrast, we do have some research showing 15%, some studies as low as 3% of Americans say they know their neighbors. That means know their name, have talked to them this month, know a fact about their neighbors. How people become connected with their local environment, how they become connected with their community and more involved and more in love with their community, no matter the size of that community. And really, there's lots of support for the idea that that begins right there with your immediate neighbors, whether you're in a subdivision or a neighborhood or an apartment complex or trailer park or whatever, those immediate neighbors, that's the starting point.
That's awesome. Well, David, we really, really appreciate you sharing this info. If people want to learn more, where should they go?
Well, you can go to our extension website, extension.missouri.edu, and just search for neighbor. And in fact, we have several classes on there. We have a free monthly program called Introduction to Neighboring 101. So if you just search for Neighboring 101, you can register and join us on those monthly meetings.
Awesome. Well, we will have the link to that on our website as well, just to help you guys out,
Okay.
komnewsnow.com. And David, thank you again.
Thank you for the time.
All right, we'll be right back on the KOAM Morning News right after this.